So today I have a special treat for you guys. I'm going to be interviewing Michael Reynolds, the resident historian here in Bluffton, South Carolina. So if you love history, you're going to want to stick around for today's show. It is going to be incredible. Do you want to know everything there is to know about the South Carolina Lowcountry? Whether it's Bluffton, Beaufort, Hilton Head Island, or Jasper County, then subscribe below and tap that bell for notifications so you'll be the first to know about everything happening here. My name is David Simcox, host of this channel and a local real estate agent. I get calls and emails every day from people just like you and you and you looking to make their move here, and I absolutely love it. So whether you're moving in 3 days, 3 months, or even 3 years, give me a call, send me an email, shoot me a text, or you can even book a Zoom call, all in the description below, so I can help you find your Lowcountry lifestyle. Today, I'm going to be doing an interview with a very interesting and unique person. I'm going to be interviewing Michael Reynolds, who is the resident historian here in Bluffton, and his family dates back hundreds upon hundreds of years here in the South Carolina Lowcountry. He also runs a Bluffton history Facebook group, and he gives talks all around town to many different groups all about Bluffton history. So if that's something that interests you, stay tuned because we're getting after it right now. Today I'm here with Michael Reynolds, and Michael Reynolds is, I guess you could say, he's the resident historian in Bluffton. And my wife actually turned me on to you because she saw you on Facebook, and you do a lot of posting on the Bluffton history page.
Correct. Yeah.
And so you're kind of the go-to guy, and I see you all around town giving talks and educating people all about Bluffton history. So I guess, can you tell me just a little bit about yourself and why are you so interested in Bluffton history?
My name's Michael Reynolds. I'm born and raised in Bluffton, South Carolina. My family has lived in Beaufort County for over 330 years.
Oh my gosh.
I have found a cattle brand stamp that my sixth great grandfather secured from the state of South Carolina in 1695. He came from Barbados and received a King's Grant for a large tract of land on St. Helena.
Okay.
And he also owned what today is Hunting Island State Park and Fripp Island.
Oh, wow.
And he raised his cattle on Fripp Island, used Hunting Island as a hunting island, and then he had a farm on off Seaside Road on St. Helena. My great-grandfather was a Confederate soldier.
Okay.
In the Civil War, and he was stationed in Bluffton. And then after the Civil War, most plantation owners lost their land due to non-payment of taxes, including my family. So I can trace or verify that he entered the Confederacy living on St. Helena in 1862, and then he was shot during the war, but he continued the Confederate service, and apparently, I haven't verified this, but apparently stayed in Bluffton after the war. I do know he was living here in 1890, actually 1894, because there was a hurricane in 1893, and there was much of the population in Bluffton was very hungry, and they sent a letter to the governor asking for support and help, and he was one of the men who signed that letter in 1894, living in Bluffton. So I know for certain he was there. So that's kind of my history. I won't say that I was always interested in history. I become the Bluffton historian by default, not by design. And I say that because I did start the Bluffton History Facebook page, and it's just that. It's that simple, Bluffton History. And that was about 15 years ago. And through that, I do a lot of research, and I do oral history interviews with some of our senior citizens, and I have time. I'm retired, so I have time to do the research. I go to the State Archives in Columbia, been in the National Archives in Washington, and I'll come out of pocket, my own money, and spend several days and wherever doing the research and sharing it. I enjoy doing that. I give free golf cart tours if I'm asked. Probably shouldn't advertise that. But,
you're going to have 3,000 people reaching out to you.
I know. I spoke day before yesterday at Sun City, about 200 people, and I mentioned I do free golf cart tours, and I was like, gosh, now my phone's going to ring. But I do a lot of speaking, about 20 times a year to different groups. I'm speaking tomorrow to the men's club at Oldfield, and I'm speaking Thursday morning to the folks at the Crescent, and then next week I'm speaking from Margaritaville. And so I speak to different communities. I speak at OLLI, which is the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. It's sponsored through the University of South Carolina. And I'll probably have 150 people attend that program. And it's really a lot of fun. I'm a retired forensic scientist by trade. I'm a fire investigator primarily. That's what I've done 42 years. And prior to retiring, I did a lot of speaking throughout the country, all over the United States, and I really enjoyed speaking. So this gives me a chance to continue doing the public presentations because they're fun to do. They really are. So that's my story.
So you told me a little bit when we were talking before this about these oral histories. So you go around and you actually interview some of the older folks who are from this area. Can you tell me, like, why is that important, and maybe share a couple of those stories of oral interviews that you've done and what you've learned through that?
My family's been here, so I'm pretty well known. And especially my dad was the very first Bluffton police chief to hold that title. There was law enforcement before him, but he was the one of in the 1960s. He was the Bluffton police chief by name, which was a part-time job then, if you can imagine that. So when I contact these people, they know who I am. And that gives me an introduction, a way to sit down with them. I've done about 60. I probably have another 100 to do. I'm doing one later this week. And I was writing for the newspaper for a while, a little monthly history story. I'm not doing that now, but I am continuing to write and publish articles, so to speak, about Bluffton history, well-researched, documented, and so forth, like that. But I'll sit down with these folks and we'll have anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hour conversation recorded. And we're recording their memories simply because, as we get older, we lose our memories. And truthfully, sometimes it's even worse than that. Since I started doing that, about 8 of those people have passed away. So now we've got memories forever preserved. And everybody tells me something I didn't know. And sometimes they're kind of fun. I was interviewing one lady and I mentioned, I said, you knew my dad, didn't you? And she said, knew him, I dated him. And I said, well, was he a good kisser? And she said, we hadn't long got in the car and we realized we were cousins and I wasn't gonna kiss my cousin. So I mean, it's fun to do these things. And the stories you get are just really, really fun, amazing, and I've talked to some people as old as 100 years old.
Wow. And I'm sure they love telling their story too. It makes them feel appreciated and valued, and really they have such a rich life.
Oh, it's great. There's so much community in Bluffton, always has been. A lot of history. Gosh, there's so much history in Bluffton, and it's fun to find it all out and share it.
So I guess that takes me to my next question, which is Bluffton history. How has Bluffton evolved and changed?
Well, it's changed a little bit. People sometimes will ask me, say, I bet you saw a lot of changes. I said, yeah, I saw both of them. And they'll look at me like, both of them? I said, yeah. But no, Bluffton has changed a whole lot. And in my presentations that I do to various groups, I talk about the census data and about the population of Bluffton, really from its incorporation in 1903 right up to modern day. And believe it or not, in 1990, which wasn't that long ago, there was only 754 people that lived in the town of Bluffton.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the town of Bluffton then was 1 square mile, where today it's about 53 square miles.
Yeah.
And today in the town of Bluffton, there's about 35,000, and that doesn't include Sun City, Rose Hill, Colleton River, Belfair, Alljoy Beach, where I live. There's Pritchardville. There's lots and lots of areas that are not included. So collectively, I estimate the Bluffton Township population to be about 70,000 people.
Oh my God!
So it's changed a little bit.
Yeah, that's just a little.
But I tell people when I tell them that, I said, I kind of joke with them. Actually, I say, now you know why us locals don't like you and they laugh at that. But then I tell them, I said, I'm glad you're here, because if you weren't, I might still have to go to Savannah to get my teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
And there's truth to that, because when I was growing up, we had to go to Savannah for groceries, to the dentist, to the doctor, just about anything you needed, you had to go to Savannah.
Yeah, that's my wife's grandma is 95 years old, and you actually, your mom worked for my wife's grandma's family at their dry cleaners.
We had that conversation. It was funny when you mentioned that your wife's grandfather had owned the very first dry cleaners on Hilton Head. And I said, well, that Doug Jones owned that dry cleaners. And you said, well, that was my wife's grandfather. And I said, and my mother, he had a dry cleaners here in Bluffton called Ideal Cleaners.
Yeah.
The building is still there, and that was about 1970 or so, and my mother actually worked for Doug Jones.
Yeah.
And then I said, hey, wait a minute, he had a son named Larry.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, that's my wife's dad. I said, my God, it's such a small world. So
that is super cool.
It is.
So this takes me to my next question, which is, what's the role that Bluffton's played in the broader history of South Carolina and the United States? And one thing you mentioned to me, which I didn't know, and I have to admit I've been misquoting this, is that Sherman was never in Bluffton. So is there any other sort of where Bluffton's played into South Carolina or U.S. history in a broader way? Well,
yeah, in a big way. If you trace it back to 1842, the United States Civil War started in Bluffton, South Carolina, underneath a tree down here called the Secession Oak Tree.
Yep.
What happened, President Tyler had signed the Tariff of Abominations, and you can Google the Bluffton movement and you can read all this. But what happened is that tariff imposed very high tariffs on goods that were imported and exported from the southern United States. And the intention, as I understand it, was the North was industrialized, but the wealth of the country was in the South.
Okay.
And they were trying to even the playing field, so to speak. But that upset many of the southern planters being the people that owned the farms and the plantations and so forth. And eventually they, in 1842, August, I think, 1842, they had the very first meeting of Bluffton area planters, and it was held underneath an oak tree down at Stock Farm Plantation.
Wow.
And that meeting, there were many meetings. Legislators would come down. Barnwell Rhett from Beaufort would come down, and he was a congressman. And eventually that movement led to another greater meeting in Beaufort, which led to a meeting in Charleston. And later the Articles of Secession were drafted from that original Bluffton group meeting. So, and then
right there under that tree.
Right there underneath that tree.
How far away is that tree from where we're sitting right now?
It's about a mile.
About a mile away.
It's still there, although it's on private property, and we ask for people to be respectful of that, because the owners do not want traffic down their driveway to get to it. But it was damaged a few years ago. Kind of the core of the tree was rotten, and some of the limbs fell, and there's some concern now about the liability of the tree as it currently is.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out how to propagate it. We're waiting on acorns to fall.
Yeah.
They haven't fallen yet, but we're hoping that we can grow new trees from it, and that way, in the event the tree were to die or have to be cut down, there's some continuity to it, because it is a very historic tree. And you can Google the Secession Oak, and you can read all about the history of the oak tree. And I've got lots and lots of photographs of it. We post those photos on the Bluffton History Facebook page for people to see what it looked like years ago, but when it was just massive. It's just a hundreds and hundreds of year old oak tree.
So, other than that historic event, are there any other historic figures that have been in Bluffton that you can recall?
Well, I don't know if I could say historical things. There probably were some. I'm trying to think. We did have some athletes, of course, that were from the Bluffton Hilton Head area.
Baseball players that came through here.
Dan Dreesen did.
Yeah.
With the Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds World Series champion. Dan's a great guy. I know him. I went to his house not long ago and visited with him. And then we've had some others. We have a movie star here in Bluffton that grew up here, Simone Griffith.
Okay.
And she's still here, and very attractive young lady. But when I was a very young child, I remember hearing about Simone Griffith and being in movies and Hollywood and all that stuff. And so we've had some celebrities come. Probably most any community in the country has their share of celebrities.
So you have a deep love and appreciation for Bluffton history, and I feel like as a community there is a deep love and appreciation for history and the preservation of the way things were in the past here, especially around Old Town. How do you feel like that love and appreciation for history has sort of helped shape the current culture in Bluffton, in and around Bluffton?
Well, I don't know. I think people do appreciate, respect, and even want to learn our history. That's my experience as I speak to groups. People have told me, wow, there's so much history here I was just unaware of.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I live here now, and this is amazing to find all this stuff out about that. And we are trying to, we're trying to preserve our history. Probably any community in the country tries to preserve their history, because if, I tell people, if we don't know where we came from, it's hard to know where we go to. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to do, is share our history with folks so they can appreciate it and know what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's important to the community, especially here in Old Town. They don't just tear old buildings down.
No.
I mean, they're going to make sure that things are done according to historic preservation guidelines and make sure that, this area of Bluffton really maintains that feel.
It should.
Yeah.
It should.
Yeah. So a lot of people that watch this channel in particular, they're thinking about moving here. Maybe they're from New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, California. We've had people come from Europe, all over the place. Why is it important for them to learn about and know about Bluffton history if they're going to move here and live here?
Well, I think anywhere somebody lives, they ought to be familiar with it, know it, get to know it, be involved in it.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine choosing this as their home and then not knowing, what happened here.
Yeah.
And I continue to learn it. And I've lived here 60 years, but I learn something all the time.
Yeah.
And even on my own property, I've recently learned something that just shocked me. It really is. I was digging a hole in my yard to plant a bush, and I found what I thought was Indian pottery.
Yeah.
And I took it. I'm a member of the South Carolina Archaeological Association, and the Hilton Head chapter has a meeting every year where you can bring things in, and an archaeologist will look at it and tell you what it is.
Oh wow, that's cool.
It is. It's really cool. And I took this little piece of Indian pottery over there, actually 2 pieces, and I'll tell you about both of them. And what I thought was Indian pottery was not. It was colonial ware.
Huh.
And colonial ware was not made by Indians, but was made by enslaved people.
Oh my.
The practice of it came from Africa over 1,000 years ago and transitioned into West Africa. So this little thing I found in my yard, the archaeologist said was probably made between 1700 and 1850 by an enslaved worker.
Oh my.
So it makes me go back now and say, well, gosh, what was my land used for in the 1700s? And he thinks it's probably one of 2 things. It could have been a cotton plantation, and it could have been a vessel that was used to transport maybe water out into the fields, or there could have been an encampment there. Right. And we don't know that, but I'm building a new house now, and I'm going to tear down the old house, and that house has been there 65 years, and underneath it is dirt that hasn't seen the sunlight in 65 years, so it should be good and sandy, without roots, and I'm going to excavate it and sift it and see what I can find, because I want to know, about stuff like that. The other piece of pottery I found was in the Martin Family Park.
Okay.
And the archaeologist said that it was probably made about 1000 BC. So that's 3,000 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
We had, Indians were here.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that's it. The history goes way back in time.
Yeah.
And if you go out to Pinckney Island, you walk around, you'll see in other places there's oyster shell, layers of oyster shells in the ground, and that's all a byproduct the indigenous Indians that lived here from thousands of years ago. That they were eating the oysters. They learned to eat them before we did. They're good to eat.
Yeah, no, I love them. That's when I go to an oyster roast, my manners go right out the window. If nobody else is going to sit up there, I'm not going to let them go.
There you go. No, don't.
Yeah,
don't.
I actually live out in Jasper County, and I live off of Bees Creek Road, which was part of the former Kings Highway.
Right.
And I believe that was a military trail all the way from like Revolutionary times, all the way through the Civil War and throughout the entire United States. And I've got about 6 acres out there, and I've got friends that have gone out with their metal detectors and like picked my place clean, but they've found all kinds of relics on my property. And I mean, they've found cannonballs, they've found all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
So,
it's probably most anywhere. You can find something of interest historically in this area.
So aside from, I guess, history, a lot of people are moving to this area. This is one of the most popular areas in the Southeast and even in the United States. Why do you feel like people are so drawn to the Lowcountry in Bluffton?
Warm weather and low taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was talking with an attorney this morning that was he was in Lansing, Michigan, and we were talking about how cold it was up there and I told him, I said, it doesn't matter where you are in America, there's some kind of climate issue, whether it's the heat of the desert Southwest or the fires in California, the earthquakes, the tornadoes in the central part, the cold weather, the hurricanes. But I told him, I said, not only do we have hurricanes, but we have high heat, high humidity, and then we have them damn sand gnats that drive us crazy. And you got sand gnats? I said, yeah. I said, you ought to come down in April or March and play golf. You better bring some bug spray.
Yeah, for me, it's when my kid starts playing baseball. It's like baseball season, you go out to the park and the gnats are kind of nasty for a little while.
Yeah, I actually, in my programs, I talk about a thing called the Great Skedaddle, which is what happened in Bluffton when the Union Army took Hilton Head. In late 1861, it scared the white population of Bluffton and everybody fled. And there were a newspaper article from 1863 that talked about Bluffton just being abandoned and grown up. And there was also a letter that I had access to that was written by a Confederate cavalry officer who said the same thing. But then when I give my presentations, I've got these up on the screen, and I said the cavalry officer said one other thing that was of interest, that here we are 160, 170 years later, we can all relate to. And it pops up and he says, the sand gnats or sandflies are really bad here.
Some things haven't changed.
Nothing's changed at all. So I tell people, I said, when you've got a little sand gnat on your arm and you hit him and kill him, he's a descendant of the ancestral sand gnats that were here all the way back in time. So nothing's changed.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I know you go and speak at 20, 30 events a year as a guest speaker, but you also put on your own event. Once a year, I guess
we do.
The History Shindig.
We do.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that event is about and what you do?
This will be our 4th year doing it. It's scheduled for February 22nd. And it's at the Bluffton Oyster Factory Park. So it's right on the river, where they have beautiful, beautiful sunsets. We have 2 speakers that are coming each year. We have 2 or 3 speakers sometimes, and this year we've got Sally Ann Robinson, who was born and raised on the Fusky Island, which way back in time was just native African Americans. That was all that lived there. There's still no bridge over there. You have to take a ferry, and way back in time there was no development. Now there's some development over there, but way back in time there wasn't. And in 1969, the school board sent a teacher over there 1 year, and his name was Pat Conroy.
Oh yeah,
and,
I've read most of his books.
Have you?
I love
Pat
him.
Conroy is the author, and he's written The Prince of Tides and The Great Santini, and he wrote a book about his experience teaching on the Fusky called The Water is Wide. And Sally Ann Robinson was one of his students. And so it's going to be a fun time. And then we've got another guy coming this year, Captain Woody. If you've ever eaten at Captain Woody's restaurant, he is the original Captain Woody. His name's Woody Collins.
Okay.
And he's been a shrimper his whole life, and he knows more about the shrimping industry than I think anybody in the country. He wrote a book, Where Have All the Shrimp Boats Gone? And he's a very entertaining speaker. We're going to have him come and talk about the shrimping industry in the Bluffton and Hilton Head area and how it changed over the years. And then one other thing that we're going to have this year, in the early 1900s, specifically about 1913, the oyster factories didn't start until the late 1800s.
Okay.
And in the early 1900s, there was a gentleman from Baltimore named Herman Platt, and the Barn and Platt Oyster Company had an oyster factory here in Bluffton, but they had plants throughout the area, and there were Polish immigrants who had come over to the United States into Baltimore, and he sent them down to Bluffton to work. And unfortunately, the children were put to work, and I'm talking 5-year-old children.
Wow.
At 4 o'clock in the morning would be required to get up before school, if they even went to school, and shuck oysters. And we've got hundreds of photographs of them that was taken by a photographer named Lewis Hine.
Okay.
And his photographs were used eventually for United States Congress to pass child labor laws. They were instrumental, and specifically one photograph he took of a young 5-year-old girl named Rose Burdyke, or Rosie as she became known as. She's just a beautiful, cute little girl, and she's got a picture of her as 5 years old shucking oysters.
I saw that on your Facebook page. That was really...
Well, what's been really cool is in the last few months is I've located her grandchildren, and 4 of her grandchildren will be attending the Shindig this year as our guests, and they will be there. They live in Charleston, and they will be there to share stories about their grandmother, the 5-year-old girl. And what's interesting too is 2 of our group members were school teachers, and said that they taught school back in the 1960s and 70s, and her photograph was in their textbook when they would talk about the child labor and the laws in America. So it's a pretty cool thing we're going to have, and we'd love to have you. We'd love to have, really, I'll promote my page. It's Bluffton History on Facebook. And if you go to that page, if you become a member, there's links on there that you can buy tickets. They're $10 a piece. It's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
We don't feed you. You can buy oysters, steamed oysters there. There's a food truck there. It's BYOB. Mm-hmm. So we don't serve alcohol or anything. We found if we serve the alcohol, we got to pay a lot more for insurance.
Yeah. And
have police protection. But if you bring your own, we don't have to do that. Okay. But it's a fun time. We have a fire pit. We have music. We have the speakers, and we just have a good time. It's a great event.
Nice. Yeah. So they can follow you on the Bluffton History Facebook group. Right. And is there anywhere else they can find you if they want to connect and learn more about you, or is that the best place?
They can email me at BlufftonSC@Yahoo.
BlufftonSC@yahoo.com.
Yeah. And how did I get that email address? Everybody asked me that. I said, how'd you get that? I said, well, I've had it 30 years. Yeah. I've actually been offered money for it.
Oh my.
Yeah, but it's that simple. BlufftonSC@yahoo.com, and that gets you to me. And if you email me, I can email you a link to buy tickets for the Shindig. So so that's easy. Or you can call me. I'll give my number out too. It's 843-707-6390.
Okay.
Now I'll have to give a lot of golf cart tours.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they know how to reach me.
Guys, this is Michael Reynolds. Thank you so much. I know we spent maybe 20 minutes talking here.
It went by fast.
You know, I know.
You had a whole list. Did we get them all?
I think we covered everything.
Okay.
And you know, he does give talks that are an hour and a half, 2 hours long.
About an hour and a half.
So we just touched the tip of the iceberg here. Yeah. If you want to learn more, you're going to have to connect to him, join the group, learn about it. And again, if you're thinking about moving here from outside the area, please take the time to learn about the history, appreciate it, make it part of the reason that you're living here. It'll just make the experience of living here so much more rich and enjoyable. So thank you very much. All right.
Glad to do it.
It's a pleasure connecting with you in person.
Oh, it's been my pleasure as well. And I thank you, and I thank you all that might be watching here. I hope there's a good group watching. It's a great place to live. I'm thankful to call it home. I hope you do too one day.
All right, guys, thank you for staying till the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed learning all about the rich Bluffton history. I hope you enjoyed meeting Michael Reynolds. I know I sure did. And hopefully you'll get to meet him at some point at one of his events, or listen to him at one of his talks, or at least join his Bluffton History Facebook group so you can learn everything there is to know about Bluffton history. Now, if you want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest happening here, be sure and like, subscribe, and tap that bell for notifications so you'll know every time I drop a new video. And if you want help finding your own Lowcountry lifestyle, give me a call, send me an email, shoot me a text, or even book a Zoom call, all in the description below so I can help you out. I hope to meet you in person at some point, but if not, I will at least see you on the next video.